Okay, this is second class of September 28th class, and now we are, as I announced, today we will cover some theological introduction to the book of Proverbs, book of Job, and Koheleth. And today I'm referring to this book, A Theological Introduction to the Old Testament. Bruce Birch, Walter Brueggemann, Terence Fretheim, and David Peterson, very, very famous scholars in the U.S. Bruce Birch was actually my professor when I studied at Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. He is an expert in Old Testament ethics, and then he is good in finding some legal principle in the Pentateuch. Now he has already retired. Now Walter Brueggemann, Bruce Birch is a Methodist pastor. Walter Brueggemann is a Presbyterian pastor. He is very famous Old Testament theologians, and then he really write so many books. I cannot count them. When he also retired, but when he was teaching at Columbia Theological Seminary, it is very close to Emory University, where I'm doing my THM degree in Atlanta. And then when he was teaching Columbia Theological Seminary, he wrote 5 or 6 books in a year. Can you imagine? He was so energetic and so fruitful scholars I have ever known. He was really the best one. And Terence Fretheim, he was Lutheran Theological Seminary professor. He's a Lutheran pastor, and he is expert at creation theology. When I was in the U.S. Last winter, I went to the GTU library. It is in UC Berkeley. And then I have found his very good, fine book that's about creation theology in the Old Testament. And then I learned a lot. At the time, I wrote a paper about the book of Job and book of Psalms. And then his book helped me a lot to read wisdom and book of Psalms in the perspective of creation theology. Now, this semester we will keep talking about creation theology, but Terence Fretheim is the leading scholar in saying that theology. When you are listening about this creation theology, you have to always remind salvation theology or redemption theology. So our Christians, we have a tendency to emphasize only this redemption theology, this soteriology. But you have to know this redemption theology should be included in the broader dimension, in the broader perspective, which is creation theology. And when we are learning from this wisdom literature, we will talk about this creation theology a lot. And then this David Peterson, he is the famous scholar in prophetic theology. So this book is very, very, very useful one. So please have this book in your hands, so you will get many insights from these famous theologians. So now, chapter 11, this book, chapter 11, talks about wisdom, order, protest. So Proverbs, Job, Ecclesiastes, and selected Psalms. And this book says about the Israel mentality, Israelite perspective when they are experiencing the real life and God. This book says that the God of Israel, people, Israelites, they regard Yahweh, the God of Israel, is at work in the historical process of the world. So please remember that those wisdom, it is coming from this kind of insight. Why? Because ancient Israelites, when they are experiencing daily life, but they also experiencing Yahweh God's self in their everyday life. So for Israelites, there's no dualism like world, church, pagan people, and then Christian people. Not that kind of dualism. If you are Israelite and if you are believing in Yahweh in the covenantal relationship, then all of your experiences, all of your life are closely related to Yahweh. No, all of your life is really in God's hands. So you have to remember everything is very closely related to God, and human life itself is divine. I can say that. So you have to remember. So every dimension in Israelite life, it's not human, it's not divine, but everything is divine and human and divine. Everything is combined together, integrated in those days. So they think that God is at work in the history of Israelites, but at the same time, God is at work in the life of Israelites. So salvation theology, soteriology, it's hard to pronounce. The redemption theology, it is concentrated on history. It is especially the history of salvation. So like Exodus, like Canaanite conquest, like led by Joshua, and the king of David and Solomon. So so far, Old Testament theologians, they are concentrated on the book of Pentateuch and book of Prophet and book of history. However, they are not interested in that wisdom books. Why? In the wisdom books, it's just common sense. There's no history. There's no salvation. But nowadays, scholars have found that no, not only history, but also all those everyday life. Israelites, they are dependent upon Yahweh in every aspect of life. So it is very interesting if you find that everyday experience in ancient Israelites are under God's hands, then now your only emphasis on soteriology, that salvation history, it makes you limited perspective in your faith life, in your religion. That's only religion. But We are not have a religious life. We have a life in God, in Jesus. So not you have to break out that doctrinal theology of salvation. Now you have to extend your theological perspective into broader dimension in creation theology. So if you get that creation theology, then those dualism, those religious, those cultic is not that technical, not that conventional, not that doctrinal life, but lively in your everyday life. You can feel God's order of creation, and by experiencing that order of creation, you will know the real meaning of salvation. So this creation theology contains this salvation theology. So that is a really important point when you are learning this wisdom literature. And now our authors in this book, chapter 11, they says that there are 5 dimensions in the wisdom literature. First of all, they think that everyday experience is very important for the sages. That's the first one. So human experience. So as I already mentioned, not only human experience, that experience is also related with divine experience. It's a very important insight it gives us. Don't you think so? Now, so far, we are feeling that when we are doing worship service on Sunday in the church, then we feel like divine touch, and we are graced by God, by preacher's sermon. And then after finishing the worship service, you come out of the door of the church, then there's in the world, now you feel like that, now we are again in the darkness. We have to fight against all those pagan people. That is a kind of dualism. That is based on only redemption theology. Nope. Now creation theology. No matter where you are in the worship service or in your company, in your daily job, but all those times, it is divine sphere. It is the field that God is at work. So when you are having that kind of theological perspective, then you will be free from that doctrinal, that technical life. Only that is a very arbitrary life based on upon your own convention, your own tradition, your own experience. Nope, that's not God's people. God's people just commit all of our life upon into the God's hand, right? So wisdom literature, those sages, they're emphasizing this human experience, everyday experience. That's the first one. Second one, our life, our everyday life, is based on ethics, and then good and evil. That is a second emphasis of our authors. Wisdom literature insists that each of these mundane matters is shot through with ethical significance and ethical outcomes. So from here, retribution theory comes from this wisdom literature. So there is a good life, there's bad life. So you have to follow that way of goodness. Then you will be prosperous. But otherwise, you will be perished. So this ethical teaching is very strong in the wisdom literature. And third one, it says that wisdom activity is the activity of speech. So you have to remember these sages are always interpreting, meditating, and writing down, preserving, and they are giving all those speeches and those writings to the descendants. So this kind of intelligent work was performed by these sages and by these wisdom groups. And fourth one, they are interested in the principle of this world, how this world is being operated. And if you find that principle, if you find that main essential idea, essential doctrine, essential principle, essential order of creation, then you have found it and you have get it, and you will live based on that principle. Then you will be happy. So that is why this book of Proverbs, they are always observing our experience, they are interpreting them, and they have to extract that basic idea, that basic principle, and then they are trying to educate next generation about that. So it is an intellectual enterprise, find out those principles and transmit those principles, those wisdom to the next generation. And the fifth one, it is theological literature. So everything, and here is based on creation theology, because they say that everything has been created by the God, the Creator. So this world is oriented to the wholeness of God. So final, ultimate purpose of the order of God is shalom. Shalom means, in Hebrew, shalom means completeness, perfection, wholeness, and integration. So now this wisdom theology and all those wisdom literature, they are trying to find out that wholeness, that completeness before that sufferings, before that pains, before that conflicts. All those human sufferings are there, but the sages, they're raising questions. Why there is just suffering in the world? Why there's pain, sorrow, and all those bad things going on? And they are trying to find out that whole will of God, the God's order. And they have found that order, they found that principle, found that happiness. Then they are trying to educate people, so they are making people being saved from that sufferings to prosperity, from that despair to the successful life, from that poverty to the richness, from that shame to the respective place and honorary position. So this especially this book of Proverbs are very sensitive to the key issue of happy life. And nowadays, all the Christians, same. We are trying to be blessed and to be happy. In order for that, we are praying and we are trying to discern the will of God. And then our Holy Spirit gives us wisdom, so gives us power, so to overcome our sufferings and all those issues that makes us foolish, unhappy, sinful. But in the middle of our sufferings and chaos, we really depending upon God's will and the Word of God. So we are being saved from that chaotic situations to cosmos, to the order of God. So from chaos to the order of God, it is salvation in another way. So and this meaning of salvation is broader, wider meaning and deeper meaning when you are trying to understand the conception of salvation. So, for example, when Jesus is saving us by the crucifixion on the cross, it means that by Jesus' crucifixion, He has given us the bridge between our sinful nature and holy God. We cannot overcome that big gap. We cannot reach to the God's holiness. However, as far as we believe in the cross, we believe in Jesus Christ, then there is a bridge, and we are being delivered from that sinful nature to God's holiness by the faith in Jesus Christ. And in the conception of creation theology, that sinful nature is chaotic situations. That holiness is God's order of creation. And the cross, Jesus' cross, when as soon as you believe in the Jesus blood, crucifixion, then your life will be ordered. Your life, the cosmos, God's cosmos, came upon your life. So your sufferings being healed, cured, and then there's a new order of God, so that you may become a new creature, which is the state of shalom. So this creation theology has given us a powerful message in your Christian life. Now we will go to the each book of the biblical wisdoms, and then I will give you each part basic questions and significance of that literature and theological theme of each book. So and this is the theological outline, because from next week we will go one by one each book. So for today, just we are just have a quick overview on those three books. So we will I will go to the next class.